Hello and welcome to this segment of CTN. To learn more, please visit ciotalknetwork.com. And the topic for today is developing leaders while delivering results. And our guests for today's show are John Kolb, who's the Vice President for Information Services and Technology and the Chief Information Officer with the Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute. Hey, John, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Very good, sir. And we also have Tom Skill, who's the Associate Provost and the CIO with the University of Dayton. Hi, Tom. How are you doing?
Great. Thanks. I'm glad to be here.
Thank you so much, both. Now, the reason we wanted to talk about this topic, which is developing leaders while delivering results, because that's an expectation. We want strong deliverer leaders to not only deliver results, but also have some of the people who they identify, or perhaps all people who they lead, in some sort of a superstar performer. And in that process, they have to make changes in the organization or into their hiring process. And what do they do every day as they go about delivering the results? So what is that magic formula? What is that secret sauce for the strong leaders who do this consistently? We wanted to have two of our top leaders to come and join and share their views. So that said, John, my first question would be to essentially get from you, what's a benchmark of a developed individual who is a superstar or a super performer, which a leader should have consistent across the board? When they say they are delivering superstars, then they should have a definition in mind. What would that be for you?
Well, I think first and foremost, and particularly if you're doing this while they're performing their jobs, is you're looking for outcomes. What are the positive outcomes that you can attribute to a certain group, and particularly to a leader, and how do they go about doing things? We actually go through a process every year. In fact, we just finished one last week where my direct report actually rate the next level of direct report in front of each other. And we actually do it on a 2-axis scale. We do it on outcomes and behaviors. So did you produce things, which is great? And did people want to work with you, which is great. And you find people that everybody wanted to work with, but they didn't really produce much, or at least as much as you would have liked. And you also find people that produce a lot, but everybody wanted to leave them alone. And what we really look for are the people that are really good at collaborating across not only our portfolio, but across the university, and produce the sort of outcomes that we're all proud of. So I think, I'm not sure it's a secret sauce, but I think that leads to a good evaluation process, and you start to identify people that are perhaps a little bit more down the structure than at least what I see every day. And the first time we did this, it was really interesting to see which of my direct reports were really straightforward in this process, and which of them didn't really want to sort of open up to say, well, I do have some problems here. And over the years, as we've done this more and more, it's been great to see how we collaborate and challenge each other and actually get better results out of that process. And I hope to develop better leadership.
Now, Tom, when you listen to John's response to my question, it definitely would resonate with you. But then my concern would be is that, do we play the law of averages when we talk about delivering results or developing people? Is that what going to cut it in today's interesting digital, fast-moving environment?
Wow. Okay. Good. Yeah. Good question there. I think that when we look at it here, I kind of start from the perspective is that, are we bringing in a person here who really can resonate with the value system and the mission that we're trying to accomplish? And will they be able to really join in as a really effective team player? I think the concept of superstars scares me a bit, because in some cases that suggests kind of an independent, autonomous person that doesn't necessarily have to reach across the aisle as much as we'd like to see that. So I think, the balancing for me is really figuring out, do they have the right technical skill mix? Do they have the right relational skill mix? Do they understand how to read the cues when they're engaging with their colleagues? And are they able really to step up when the challenges are most intense and maintain composure while at the same time delivering results? So it's kind of it's an interesting chemistry. And if I actually could test for that on the way in the door when you hire people, that'd be wonderful. But I think there's a bit of a gamble when you're hiring folks. But I think we clearly are looking at similar kinds of characteristics as skill set, competency, soft skills, good fit with the organization,
perhaps a sense of wanting to both build their career, but also help build the institution, looking for those qualities.
So, John, a superstar, I mean, at least the way Tom mentioned about what a superstar could be, or what's the regular definition, is someone who's an obnoxious loner who, while create great results, but is simply a prima donna types who doesn't care about anyone else. Now, what if I were to turn this definition around and call this as an individual who every day comes and maximizes his performance to begin with, and of course, work towards the end where wherever he can or she can be on of support and or be a resource to others, that person is. But at no point do they basically go below their best just because they have to not exactly play along with others, just because an organization or a given individual who's also a leader is saying, you got to play well, and this is my definition of what playing well means.
Well, it's a little pejorative with what I heard Tom say, but that's okay. I think you want to be careful about people that are unidimensional, that are only good technically, but can't work with people, or can work with people, but don't bring a lot of skill to the table, those sorts of things. But having said that, in the IT field, you do get some really great contributors who are great, if you will, backroom people, but you don't want to let them out in the front. And they may be great coders, or they may be great DBAs or other things, but they're not the people that you want from out front with faculty, students, staff, and providing your services. And so part of what we do here, and I would expect a lot of places to do, is we do find separate tracks for some people, where there's the technical track where people can be rewarded for their technical contribution and don't have to go into management, which I think that was always a mistake, that people thought they had to go into management to move up the ladder, if you will. And there's also a management track where we do have people that are better at looking across the board and a broader set of responsibilities and things to get done. And so we have a management track. We try to reward both of those tracks and encourage people to sort of land where they can provide the best contribution.
So, Tom, would you agree that a leader could be someone who is also on a technical track, but a person has they think like a leader? They don't need to be a manager to be a leader.
Yeah, absolutely. We struggled with this many years ago, and we've kind of figured out some of it. We've created staffing tiers for our technical folks that takes them from an engineer to a senior engineer to a lead engineer, and they're doing highly technical work, frequently working in teams, and occasionally they're leading projects. And so we see that as a good way to recognize that the outstanding technical expertise, and we recognize that was really an important kind of designation if we want to be able to recruit and retain the best staff, because folks have some aspirations for moving up, and we don't want to push people into management when in fact their real desire is to be outstanding in the technical area. But we also are looking to cultivate many of our technical people to move into leadership roles, because we find that if we have technical people with those strong backgrounds communicating and engaging and leading technical teams, we typically see better results, because they're able to really understand and kind of frame the technical work for management in a way that non-technical people don't do quite as well. I'm not sure if that gave you a right answer.
No, I mean, this is definitely a great response. Now, John, when you are looking at the definition of a leader, besides the senior level people or someone who's got the exemplary skills, would you take an average person and turn that person around and then earn the stripes of being a leader because you developed another one, versus thinking that I will only get the prodigies and I will get those people turn into incrementally more, and that's what will earn me the stripe?
I think maybe Tom alluded to this earlier. I think it's always difficult to completely understand what kind of talent you have when you're bringing people into your organization. And I've seen some, to use your term, prodigies that haven't been terribly successful. Yeah, you not only have to be smart and capable and have the right skills, but you have to be willing to put the sweat equity into these jobs and really understand the business in a larger scale. Typically, most of the things we do are not to IT. They're IT connected to some other activity like student life or academics or something else? And are you willing to really understand what other people are trying to accomplish and then bring your skills as a IT professional and collaborate with them to get an outcome? So I think Prodigies is something I'd be a little bit skittish of, and we've certainly had some Prodigies, but we've had some really people that look strong coming in that have been great as they've developed, and it's been fun to watch them develop. And we've had a few people that haven't gone anywhere too, and then you have to figure out what to do next there. But I think if you continually reinforce good behavior, good outcome, and encourage people to take on new challenges, that's the best way to develop talent, whether you saw it coming in or you saw it as they develop.
And with that, go ahead, Tom.
Yeah. And John is right on track there, because I think we've had similar experiences. And what I've seen too frequently is when we bring in particularly our younger talent, they tend to really judge themselves by the prowess of their technical skills. And they very quickly realize that their relationship skills are going to either help them succeed or are going to indicate that they're not succeeding at all. And that reminds me of the thought that too frequently in the IT field, we tend to hire people based on their technical skills, and we more frequently fire them based on their soft skills. And so I think that in many cases, we're trying to look for that balance. And I'm also trying to look for that young person that, yes, they could be very cocky and sure, and they have incredible skills, but I'm also trying to look to see, do they have that kind of sense of building a community within their organization as part of our team? And that's an important factor for us, because we've seen too frequently that just one staff person who can be very disruptive can completely throw the organization off its rhythm. And so we're always very sensitive to making sure we get a good cultural fit, while at the same time being very sensitive to building diversity. And I think that's been a big challenge, is that getting good cultural fit and encouraging inclusiveness and diversity in the organization.
Let's take a quick break, listeners. We'll be right back. And Tom, I have this question of intentionality, which is, I'm not sure if there's a word, but point is being intentional about delivering results is natural because you are measured, your performance is measured based on it. But when it comes to developing leaders, are we truly intentional? Are we just saying, oh, we will give them the environment, create the environment, or support them wherever, and whosoever becomes a leader, God bless. Otherwise, hey, it doesn't always happen. It's not 100%. Can we go with that approach towards developing leaders, or is there something we do which shows that you as a CIO or anyone else in the leadership position is truly being intentional about developing other leaders, which is also their job? Please take care, listeners. We'll be right back.
Predict your company's future by creating it. Is your workforce able to connect, exchange ideas, and share brilliance simply and securely? Create tomorrow, today. Empower your people to innovate anytime and anywhere with secured BlackBerry Enterprise mobility management and document sharing solutions. To learn more, visit blackberry.com/enterprise. Your growing business needs a highly productive workforce, effectively communicating and collaborating without exposing corporate data to cyber attacks. Are you looking to balance security and workforce productivity? Move beyond short-term measures and securely scale your business with BlackBerry Enterprise Mobility Management Solutions. To learn more, please visit blackberry.com/enterprise.
Patient-centered care requires a connected enterprise. Are you ready? If you're looking to scale your healthcare IT efforts, visit redmayne.com/help today. Whether it's to connect data from multiple partner solutions or developing software for unique needs, Redmayne can help. To find out how Redmayne can help your company deliver on the patient-centered care promise, visit redmayne.com/help or call 773-693-3919. Visit today.
You are listening to CTN, CIO Talk Network with Sanjog Aul. To learn more about our program, please visit CIOTalkNetwork.com. Now, back to the show.
Welcome back. So Tom, let's talk about the intentionality of developing leaders while we're intentional about delivering results. But what about us taking ownership about developing other people?
Yeah. And so I'd love to be able to say that, particularly in the IT leadership space, that every day that we're thinking about developing leaders and delivering on our projects with precision and accuracy and excellence. And I think that many of us tend to gravitate towards, boy, I got to get this project delivered on, or I got to get this organization moving in this direction. And we frequently, I think, look at our leadership development as we kind of hit that when the opportunity arises. And we probably aren't as nearly intentional as we'd like to be. Now, with that said, I think that many of us try to have a certain set of leadership development practices that we put out there, and we try to hit very frequently as part of what we're doing. From my end of things, I focus a lot on developing what I call a communication-centric view of IT, which looks at a lot, how do we better engage with our constituents? How do we better inform our leadership? How do we better own our issues and problems and solve them? And so it's all around this concept of being highly transparent and walking the walk as leaders so that all of our staff are seeing that we're doing as we say, not as we tell them to do. And so I think that intentionality is certainly something we need to keep front of mind about leadership development. And I would probably say the opportunity presents itself more frequently as a learning by doing day. Because if I can help develop leaders while we're moving on our initiatives, and we can use the work itself as the topic for how can we do this better? How can we better develop your skills in handling this? I think that might be one of the things that I would look for in how I try to manage my day.
So to that end, John, if you were to use that opportunity-based development, people development, and then you had to put that in practice in your organization per se, then when the opportunity comes to throw them in the fire with the intention that they will grow, but then you also don't know if these guys will succeed, and then your neck is on the line and the project's success is also in jeopardy, or at least in line. What are you thinking at that time? Are you truly thinking people and talent and leadership development, or are you thinking your paycheck?
I tend not to worry about my paycheck, but I do think when things get tough, that's when you really see some great leadership traits come out, right? So you'll see people really hunker down and say, I'm going to make my way through this, and this is the way I'm going to do it. People say, wait a minute, I need a lifeline here. How am I going to make my way through this? And actually both can be positive, right? The people who really recognize that they need a lifeline, that's actually a level of maturity that I think could be useful, as long as they're just not giving up all responsibility for what they're doing. And the people that hunker down could be a negative if they're not recognizing that this is the time when I really need to call in some other troops because I'm in over my head. And so I try to obviously not micromanage these things because I want people to get these things done, and I have my own set of challenges to go through. But I do try to pay attention to where I think they are in a project, and are they at a point of inflection that we need to pay attention to. And then I agree with Tom. I like the way he said the communication-based leadership. And I think I got accused once by one of my directors that I thought all problems could be solved with good communication, that I didn't quite know how to react to that because I thought it was a pretty smart thing to say, actually. And I do think you can communicate your way through things and try to understand things. And if they're in the fire, I think that's okay. The other piece here is I think it's important as you're doing these things that these projects are with a lot of other groups. So once again, as I said before, student life, academics, whatever. So if a project's in trouble, I'll also reach out to my counterpart, like the vice president of student life or the provost or others, and say, this may be in trouble and how should we go about this together? As opposed to thinking that it's my responsibility. And that's also helpful to essentially walk a walk to you, what Tom said, that I'm also reaching out to others to help solve the problem. I'm not trying to solve it within our portfolio if it's a large enough problem.
And so Tom, this question is for you. When you are trying to communicate your way in and out of situations and develop leaders and deliver what you're supposed to deliver, what is the level of authenticity and openness that you're able to keep? Because communication could be used or abused as needed for getting something done. But then if we lose authenticity in the process, and I'm not saying any of you do that, but I'm saying if it is lost in the process, because it's easy to lose, the damage could be beyond repair sometimes.
Wow.
How do you prevent that from happening when the stakes are so high?
Yeah. I think that a key attribute when I think about a communication-centric view of IT is that we are really building around a transparent relationship where we're owning those problems out front, we're identifying the best way forward, and we're making sure that we are working closely with all those allies across campus. As John mentioned, he's reaching out to his counterparts across campus whenever a problem looks like it's going to grow or a project's not going to succeed. And I think that one of the really interesting things that I've noticed when I came in, I've been in the CIO role about 14 years. And before that, I was faculty member. So I came from a very different world. And faculty being very autonomous, IT having to be very collaborative, be successful. And I've noticed that IT folks didn't have a whole lot of communication-centric training. They were really focused on solving the IT problem. And one of the best examples that I can point up is how many times we have our folks racing to solve IT problems, and we don't tell our constituents that there is a problem. And so they're sitting wherever they are thinking that the problem that they're experiencing is on them. And of course, the worst thing is when they finally find out it wasn't on them, they're furious with us because they spent a lot of time. So I think that there's not a risky side to over communicating, but there is a risky side to only communicating. So you need to communicate a lot, but you've got to continue delivering and moving forward and being very project management focused. And I think that those two things together make the difference in a successful development of leadership within IT.
So, John, you look at the dynamics that play in an organization, you talking to stakeholders, you talking to individual team members, talking to each other. And among all of them, we have to have the right type of attitude, which an individual has. You have to have the right type of group dynamics and a common mindset where each of them should be thinking about where the organization is trying to go. So how much of that is in your control, or you spray and then pray?
Well, by the way, in respect to this previous conversation, I also think that one of the things that may be implicit in what Tom said is not only the good communication and getting out there, but it's also the optics of being very responsive. I remember a long time ago, somebody said to me that problems, unlike fine wine, do not get better with time. So when you really get out there and start to deal with something quickly, if somebody's identified something to you as an issue, finding out if it's real, it's not real, and being responsive wins a lot of points and really saves a lot of time downstream. So I'm sorry, your other question was?
So here we have got a lot of moving parts, right? So we've got the attitude, the intellect, the mindset, the group dynamics, and all of them, if they are not working well, then you are leaving something left to be desired.
Right.
But you would like to shepherd everything to go towards the direction you want it to. So how much of control do you really need to have for you to have results delivered, the team in place, and individuals delivering to their maximum potential?
So let me answer that from an enterprise level first, and then to say how it comes down through all of what we call portfolios. So we have a strategic plan. Our president put one in place and got board approval within a year of when she arrived in 2000. And we've essentially put a second revision of that in place. That's the strategic plan for the entire university. Every year we go through a pretty extensive performance planning process where we identify what the highest priorities are for a particular year. So for instance, in this year, one of our highest priorities is a capital campaign we're in the middle of. So that then tells each of the portfolios, how are you going to do things to support the campaign? And in my portfolio, it may be some things that we're doing with a data warehouse or some data analytics or some tools for our folks then development as they go out and work on the campaign. In communications, it may mean that they have to develop some brand activities and some better communication channels for some of the messages and so on. But having that overall strategic plan then helps, and we course that all the portfolios align to that plan. So within my portfolio, we go through a pretty extensive planning process where we put our performance plan together. And I think there's 22 or 23 portfolios at Rensselaer that do the same process. And then each one of those plans gets reviewed at our cabinet level. And we actually do it 3 different times. We do it once for the plan itself, once for the plan to budget, and once for as we're preparing to go talk to the board about where we are and all that. So the cabinet actually lists us to 3 different sections with each portfolio. It's a lot of time. But one of the things that's nice about that is at my level, I have a pretty good idea, not only obviously what I'm up to, but what the provost is up to, what the VP of communications is up to, what the VP of HR is up to, and so on. And I can articulate that to others. But the other piece is when I put the plan together for .CIO with my leadership crew, actually the inside cover of that plan lists all their names and they sign it. So it's not John Kolb's plan, it's the .CIO plan with 10 signatures on the front page. And that's a way to make sure that you're getting people to spend some time thinking about what their piece of this and how much they're buying into it. And then people take portions of that plan. I actually go through this with the leadership group in my area, and we'll say, okay, here was a challenge where we wanted to make sure that our wireless access points were up to snuff, or that our storage systems were doing this, or that our help desk, we had a new system in place for that. And those are assigned 1 or 2 leaders in the group that I manage to say, you own this and you can grab from the rest of the division, but how are you going to go ahead and do that? So that way there's an alignment overall with the university, right down to the implementation operational groups.
Let's take a quick break, listeners. We'll be right back. And let's go further down in this question. And Tom, I'd like to ask you, given that the plan was put in place and John had a phenomenal idea of getting everyone to sign on that so that there is a buy-in up front, but then the ownership has to stay even when the obstacles come, even when there are some other disruptions that happen, because not everything that you put on a plan is the only thing you'll end up doing, given, again, the type of disruptions that we are seeing today. So when you keep putting more on the plate or keep changing the variety and the volume on what's on an individual's plate, does everything stay the same and then they will do exactly as you expected? And when the expectations are not going to remain the same, what do you do as a leader to again deliver the results, but don't stop developing the other leaders within the group? Please stay tuned, listeners. We'll be right back and explore.
Predict your company's future by creating it. Is your workforce able to connect, exchange ideas, and share brilliance simply and securely? Create tomorrow, today. Empower your people to innovate anytime and anywhere with secured BlackBerry Enterprise mobility management and document sharing solutions. To learn more, visit blackberry.com/enterprise. Your growing business needs a highly productive workforce, effectively communicating and collaborating without exposing corporate data to cyber attacks. Are you looking to balance security and workforce productivity? Move beyond short-term measures and securely scale your business with BlackBerry Enterprise Mobility Management Solutions. To learn more, please visit blackberry.com/enterprise.
Patient-centered care requires a connected enterprise. Are you ready? If you're looking to scale your healthcare IT efforts, visit redmain.com/help today. Whether it's to connect data from multiple partner solutions or developing software for unique needs, Redmain can help. To find out how Redmain can help your company deliver on the patient-centered care promise, visit redmain.com/help or call 773-693-3919. Visit today.
You You are listening to CTN, CIO Talk Network, with Sanjog Aul. To learn more about our program, please visit CIOTalkNetwork.com. Now, back to the show.
Welcome back. So, John, we have to do something with the zero slack or close to zero slack that we have created or the environment around has created. So it's not leaving any room, even though we create great plans up front, but then things keep changing. So where does the leadership development go and where does consistent delivering of results go?
Well, I'll tell you, from my role as the IT leader at the University of Dayton, I feel it's my responsibility to make sure that I'm doing everything I can to add to the resources that our people need to be successful and to relieve the pressure when that pressure is too great for them to be able to be successful. And so part of what I spend my time doing is really engaging with our senior leadership around a realistic priority setting. And I'll give you an example of what we face. We have 3 to 4 vice presidents who have been here 2 years or less. And every one of them comes in with their vision for what they want to do with their unit. And frequently it includes a new IT system or at least a major upgrade to the existing system. And so what I'm trying to do is help negotiate what is a reasonable timeline for them to be able to get what they need. And do I have sufficient staff resources to do that? I think that our leadership staff within IT tends to have a very good attitude towards managing complex projects that tend to be compressed against each other. I think what I really appreciate what they do is that they get very concerned about how much pressure that puts on their technical teams and how that helps them see the priorities or manage those priorities. So I don't really have a magic solution to that, but I do know that the conversation is around right-sizing resources, making sure that we don't over-stress and abuse our current staff, because what will happen is that we will then have even less staff to deliver on those challenges.
So, John, when you look at the projects, individual projects, everything is got a very defined scope. But then there are certain things which are common, fundamental for the whole organization, which makes you more or less effective in any project that you take on and deliver. So you talk about the practices, the policies, the politics, the processes, or anything that is fundamental to the organization. 2 types of those elements. One are within your control, so you go tinker with them to see you can make them the most optimized. Then there are others which are not in your control. The max you can do is to appeal to the corresponding stakeholders and owners or to use your influence. What are you supposed to do which will forward your agenda of delivering good or better results every time and also get to deliver or rather develop very good leaders?
Well, maybe this is at the crux of all of what we've been discussing today. If people think that there's just a textbook you pull out and you find the right formulas for leadership, you're all set, they probably ought to go off and do something else than be a leader, because there are certainly some very defined discipline types of things to being a leader. And we talked about some of those, but there's a little bit of art to the science too, of knowing which part of the bureaucracy to poke. Do you go in at a level that's a peer level, or do you let the operational folks interact with each other and stay away from some of that? I mean, that's actually something you learn over time. And Tom talked about a couple of new vice presidents. Well, that then changes the dynamic a little bit. You have to figure out whether those new vice presidents are willing to interact in a way that's going to be collaborative, or are they set up in the way they're going to do things. I do think that you use both things you can control and things you can influence and figure out how to do some things. I formed a pretty strong collaboration with our VP of Strategic Communications this past year on the web side of things. The web presence is one of the places where there doesn't seem to ever be enough resource to really provide everybody with the web that they want or the web presence that they want. A new dean wants a new web presence, a new center director, a new department head, and so on. And so how do you prioritize that? And she and I brought our resources together, formed a web group to do the first thing that we said to them is, we'll give you enough cover to make sure you can do the prioritization that we think is important, and we'll hold off the wolves outside the fence type of thing while you're doing that. And that was important for them to hear up front. So when they get these calls from left field, they had a way of dealing with that. Well, they were trying to do what we wanted them to do. And I think that Tom said it. I think it's important from a higher level leadership place to be able to use that influence, control, whatever you want to call it. And it's a combination of all the above to help manage things so the folks down in the trenches can get things done.
So, Tom, there are two types of problems, right? One which you can control, others are you have to leave it to time or to the Almighty. So, because that is beyond your control. If you were to talk only about the challenges and roadblocks which are perhaps in your control, but we could do a better job as leaders in terms of developing people while delivering results, what would those challenges and roadblocks be?
Oh my goodness. So if you're asking like in terms of in the areas where I can control things, I guess that's probably the easy part of it. And very little of the work that I think most IT operations do, we feel we have autonomous control. We are so reliant upon everybody else working collaboratively with us with goodwill and hopefully with a common goal in mind. I guess my challenge here would be, what can I do when I see challenges coming at me that will facilitate a successful outcome? And at the core of that, I think, is making sure the relationships are such that as these projects or these challenges are coming forward, that people trust us and they're able to come to us and we're able to go to them to make sure that we're working through it. In most cases, we have lots of very technically capable people. I just think that the biggest challenge at the leadership level is how well can we orchestrate this? And it really, a lot of that has to do with how thoughtful we are, how willing we are to go the extra mile, how much we're willing to kind of suppress our egos so that we can give credit beyond us, or at least open the door and say that we're here to work with you and let's see what we can figure out. So I think that a lot of this is, I think John hit the nail on the head. The management and leadership piece here is more art than it is science. And it's one of being able to read the cues of the people around you. It's one of figuring out how best to empower your staff to succeed and how to build that bridge to the people across campus that are going to be the folks who will determine whether or not you're successful.
So, John, when you look at the same question that I asked, what do you think would be something that you are losing the sleep on today, or you think what things are getting more complex, which will prevent you from developing leaders while delivering results?
Well, a couple of comments here. First of all, I gave up not sleeping. So there's enough problems here to keep everybody awake. So I sleep very well. Thank you very much. But I do think that there's an associated angle here that's pretty important with what Tom just said. And you have to read the tea leaves. Where you report in the structure is actually a pretty important piece to this. Are you at a level where you're hearing some of those conversations and you can recognize when there's a problem or when there's not a problem, as opposed to finding out about them second or third level? That's very important to me. In my organization, I report into the president and the cabinet, and I'm part of the cabinet, and that's really important because I can hear a lot of the side conversations and know when I need to really pay attention or when there's something else going on. So that's one issue. The other thing, and maybe get to the complexity piece, one of the best descriptions I heard a number of years ago about leadership is, and I think this was attributed to a guy who was president of Texas A&M at one point, said that if you have really good people working for you, the only problems that rise to your level are the ones with all bad solutions. And that was such a very elegant way of saying, yeah, what you want people to get to do in your organization is to start solving things before they get to your level. And if it was an easy choice, they should have already solved it. It doesn't even come to your attention. It's the ones that are really sticky, that have all sorts of communications issues around them, political issues around them, technical issues around them, and so on, but there's no clear way through. And then when people get to see how I solve them or my team solve them and how we collaborate and how we work our way through that, I think that's when you walk the walk and it can really help the new emerging leaders to be, oh, okay, this is how you go about doing this, as opposed to, I thought it was just going to be cross this T, dot that I, and you're done. And that, I think, is very effective for new leaders to see that other people struggle with some of these problems too.
So, Tom, you mentioned about relationships and which are key for anything to work in team environment or in an organization. So how much does you as a leader and any of your lieutenants as individual budding leaders are actually working towards building relationship across the pond with your business counterparts proactively, so that you're not just waking up one fine morning and then say, okay, I got to get something done, so let me go and have a beverage with this individual?
Yeah, good one, because I've noticed that with some of our younger folks, as we're developing them into leaders, one of the best lessons that they can learn is the importance of reaching out and building those relationships before things go sour. It's much harder to solve things with a person that you don't have a relationship with than it is the one you do. So we do spend a lot of that time doing that. And that has been part of what we've driven into our organization, is the importance of the relationship. Relationships matter everywhere, and technical expertise matters a lot, but the relationships have got to be cultivated on a regular basis. And so we do that frequently. I have folks rotating through. I want you to make sure you're touching base. Even if they don't call you, you call them, because they're one of our most critical clients. I can tell you at our university, our enrollment management group, they bring in the students. That's 80% of our revenue. So their success is our success. Their failure would be our failure. So we are constantly building that relationship. But then also we have a campaign that's underway. John mentioned that RPI is in a campaign as well. And our advancement division, they have huge needs. And so if we're not understanding and connecting with them, we're not really doing our job as IT people. And that I think is actually a change over the many years that I've been in IT. For a long time, IT kind of prided itself on, if we could just become like a utility, our world is going to be great. And I think now, particularly at the university level, IT realizes that if we become a utility, then they just may as well just outsource us to the cheapest bidder, because we're not adding value to the mission. And so for our perspective, we want to be a great utility, but we also want to be a partner in innovation. And we know that with innovation comes problems and mistakes, but it also becomes opportunities. So I think that clearly, the relationship piece is absolutely one of our key jobs.
So, John, how would you have taught someone else how to build relationships? Just by showing how you do it? Because it's such a subjective area of development.
It is, but I agree with Tom. I think it's critical. And I usually tell people, and maybe this is one of those things that I learned a long time ago, was make friends when you don't need them. Though if you know that someday you're going to be working closely with enrollment management or advancement or other places, get to know some of those folks, particularly when you're not in crisis mode, because crisis mode is not usually the time to make good friends. The crisis mode is where you seek out good friends and try to figure out how to solve problems. And so I've spent time with a number of people around campus, and I encourage my folks, I try to find projects where I can get my folks working with folks they may not have worked with in the past. And to some extent, get them out of their comfort zone. If you haven't worked with student life before, well, maybe we'll get you involved with the early warning system or one of the other projects we're working on with student life right now, like preferred names or something like that. And get people to see, well, they're trying to deal with a real issue that is of concern to folks, and how do we go about doing that? Well, paying attention to the things that IT always pays attention to about how it works, privacy, security, all those things. And I think it's sometimes eye-opening for folks in our organization, particularly newer folks that may have come from a corporate background rather than a higher ed background, and get that kind of collaborative experience. And I think it's fun to watch, once again, watch their development.
One last question for you, Tom. If you were to take, say, 10 words and describe the mindset of today's leader who will make the organization be relevant for tomorrow, keeping in mind that they have to deliver results and at the same time developing people, what would that leadership mindset be?
Well, clearly, I think the leadership mindset has to be one of being unafraid to be surrounded by folks who are smarter than you, and being unafraid to invite debate and discussion among your smart people, and willing to be able to accept differences at that level. I think that's at one level of making sure that I'm well informed because I have smart people who are unafraid to tell me what I need to hear. I think the second part of that then needs to be the language of cooperation, collaboration, and relationship. But the two of those, I think, to me, match it up. I don't want to always be the smartest guy in the room. In fact, I'm probably going to be most successful if I'm never the smartest guy in the room.
On behalf of the show and our listeners, thank you so much, John and Tom, for sharing your views on how the leaders today, with all the fluctuations and the changes that we are seeing in the marketplace and the business environment, can go ahead and develop leaders while delivering results. Thank you so much for your input.
Great. Thank you.
And listeners, please like us on Facebook, search for CTN. Be sure to follow us on Twitter, join our LinkedIn community, and please go and download the podcast. They are on iTunes, TuneIn, Stitcher, iHeartRadio. There are quite a few channels from where you can download and listen. So thank you again for listening to this segment on CTN. This is Sanjog Aul, your talk show host. Till next week, take care and God bless.